Let's actually address this since it's a much broader problem in the field of writing critique. Using arrogance as an excuse for a villain's decision is not something unheard of in writing, but there are many that treat this character attribute as an end-all justification for any otherwise questionable decision a character might make. Arrogance is certainly a personality flaw that any character can have. It can even be the quintessential trait that causes that character's downfall, but I think it should go without saying that arrogance as a character trait doesn't excuse every poor decision that character makes by merit that it's a plausible flaw. There are many examples of characters, villains most of all, who suffer losses due to their own obvious mistakes. Some notable examples include Walter White, Oberyn Martell, Light Yagami, General Hux, and Jafar. For whatever reason, they choose to limit their abilities or purposefully handicap themselves in some way that inevitably leads to their own failure. Despite such decisions appearing unnecessary or obviously incorrect, they continue with this decision out of some inner character flaw that they possess. Light chooses to kill Lindale Taylor when it doesn't benefit him in any way, which results in Elle learning what city Kira lives in. Jafar chooses not to kill Aladdin with sorcery and instead toys with him long enough until he's defeated. Oberyn Martell doesn't kill Gregor Clegane, instead hoping to get a confession out of him first, which allows the Mountain enough time to kill him. Walter White turns down Elliot and Gretchen's offer to pay for his cancer treatment free of charge, which leads to, well, the rest of Breaking Bad. And General Hux refuses to shoot at the Raddus while they're escaping in the beginning of The Last Jedi, and sends no Star Destroyers ahead when chasing them in the second act, both of which result in the Resistance escaping. I want you to think about that last example most of all, and ask yourself, why would he do this? If you think that Hux's decision was not only in character, but that the reason he made it was out of arrogance, you would be incorrect. As for the other 4 examples, if you thought that those decisions were made out of arrogance, I'm sorry, but you're also wrong about that too. There are no characters that make decisions out of arrogance. Ever. Not even characters who are arrogant. This is a misconception that many people have about character flaws that needs to be corrected. To say that a character makes a decision because they are arrogant implies that they are cognizant of their arrogance. They knowingly choose to make arrogant decisions because it is a trait that they value. This is not impossible for a character to be written as, but none of the characters who are defended as being arrogant, especially not the 5 I mentioned, fit this description at all. This also comes from a misunderstanding of what makes an arrogant character good or bad. A good example is one who is characterized as arrogant by their questionable but prototypical decisions irrelevant of their arrogance, while poorly written characters are the reverse, written to take action off of the arbitrary basis that they're supposed to be arrogant and nothing more. But those decisions of those well-written characters are rooted in something far more fundamental to their character and background, and then making those decisions is what makes them an arrogant character. Light grew up being the smartest, most talented student by far. He was used to being superior to all those around him, so when he's challenged on public television in front of what he believes was all of Japan, he'd feel humiliated if he could not prove himself able to rise to it. Walter White grew up in a similar situation, feeling superior to so many around him due to his intellect, and because of this it made him insecure about his financial success in comparison to Gretchen's. And thus he cut all ties with her and Grey Matter in order to prove he is capable of finding the same success on his own. Oberyn Martell wanted not only to defeat the man who raped and murdered his sister, but also to humiliate him. He wanted to prove the Mountain's guilt in front of the very rulers of King's Landing themselves. Jafar is possibly the most unalike of the 4. It was arrogant of him not to kill Aladdin, but he was also capable of toying with him for however long he wanted without any hope of losing. He had lived inferior to a sultan that he considered a fat oaf, and waited years looking to amass enough power to one day surpass him. He is so fixated on gaining power that he doesn't consider how each of his wishes invalidates the last, or any other repercussions that they might have. After waiting years and years for this very moment, he only wanted to prove that he was the most powerful. You'll notice a common through line between all of these characters is that they felt the need to prove themselves in some way, either due to insecurity, inferiority, or some other personal reason. While all of these decisions could be called arrogant, none of them were made because they were arrogant. That's because good, arrogant characters don't make decisions on the basis of being arrogant. Arrogance, even in real life, arises from a need to prove something, to show that someone can accomplish what they want, how they want to, even when they don't need to, or shouldn't have to. This is the problem with defending Hux. There is nothing he wants to prove that can be proven by allowing the Resistance so many opportunities to escape. Anything that he would need to prove could be accomplished by simply being a competent general. Shooting at the Raddus instead of the Resistance base that they're fleeing accomplishes this. as does sending Star Destroyers ahead to keep the enemy within firing range instead of waiting for their fuel to run out. Since failure will only result in his further humiliation, he'd want to remove as many sources of failure as possible. But there's another reason this isn't in character. No matter how arrogant that character is, their pride alone should not supersede their intelligence, base sensibilities, and instincts for self-preservation. Huck should know in both the first and second act of the film that the Resistance has the opportunity to escape if the Raddus isn't destroyed. The first because, well, that much is obvious, as they're capable of jumping to hyperspace at any time that they're ready. And this is true for the second act, because he should be able to reference any star charts to determine that they're nearing a planet to where the Resistance can escape to, and then ram the Supremacy after evacuating. Every piece of information should inform him of the numerous opportunities he's giving the Resistance to escape that he might not be able to prevent if he doesn't take action. Instead, he ignores any amount of his own sensibilities. As for the other good examples I gave, Light had no way of knowing that killing Lindell Taylor would reveal his location to the police, or that anyone could even have concluded Kira was anyone but a god. If he had pulled something like this well into Kira's investigation, it would be incredibly out of character. Oberyn Martell was confident that he could beat the Mountain in a duel, and if he hadn't dragged things out just to get a confession, he would have easily. He is far superior to the Mountain in every possible way, and he only lost because the Mountain took advantage of one single moment of weakness. But if the duel was far more equal, with more close calls on Martell's part, then choosing to needlessly extend the battle instead of cutting his losses would make him appear stupid, not arrogant. Jafar knows that no one can beat him with his power, at least not in a straight fight. There was never any reason to assume that allowing any of the heroes to live would come back to bite him, which is also reinforced by the movie with how he only lost because he was outsmarted. And while it's true that by declining Gretchen and Elliot's help means that Walter would likely die of lung cancer, his arrogance doesn't prevent him from understanding and accepting this fact, which he does, under the conditions that he can earn the money to help pay for his son's education through the manufacture and distribution of methamphetamines. Even though all of these characters made arrogant decisions, none of them are made without consideration to their sensibilities and desire for self-preservation.